treasure seekers. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico, and joining me as always from Washington State, it's Bryn and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Good evening. I think the first thing we need to ask is we've been getting some feedback that people are upset that we're saying coming to you live and we're not actually live. And that made me realize I don't know why that ever even started.
I know. I'm sorry. I
Uh,
full transparency. I used to do a fantasy football podcast for many years before this podcast, and I always just said coming to you live for fun, even though it wasn't. And yeah, that is true. There is no live stream of the show. We've done it one time as a special event, but we might do it more in the future. But yeah, that's a lie. So every podcast starts with a lie. Apologies. Doesn't help our
there's your
credibility.
answer, everyone. Well, for what I mean, it's not like there's no editing. So what you see is what happened live.
Yes, no editing. It's all
For
one
what that's
take.
worth.
Yes, fair enough.
Um, I'm coming in hot from the golf course. That's what I've been up to this evening.
Nice.
Here's the real mystery that needs to be solved, people. Why is it that when you golf, if you're putting well, you can't hit the ball, but if you're hitting the ball well, you can't putt? Somebody tell me that. If we can figure that out, that is my ultimate Pokemon box.
So you
But,
had a
but
mediocre
golf
round, it
golf is good.
sounds like.
Well, I'm I'm very pleased if I can shoot in the 30s on 9 holes. I'm very pleased. And it was like a surefire thing on the back nine. Didn't get it done on the front, going into the back. I'm like, wow, I finally have done it. It's been a little while. I'm going to be able to shoot in the 30s. And then what do? I chunk it into the water on hole 17. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I had a chance to redeem it with a birdie on 18, lipped it out. So I
And
shot a
you
40 on the back.
and you pay to have that much fun.
I paid to have that much fun. Oh, it was so frustrating. So now it's addicting. Now I got to go back and just make it happen. So that's how golf went. Cody asked how golf went before we got on, and I said you have to wait.
Cody, any news from your end?
Not quite as exciting. Well, more exciting for me. We got a Ninja Creamy, and it just showed up. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's a, for those who don't know, it's an ice cream maker. But you got to freeze your first batch for 24 hours. So I'm just like, it's like watching paint dry, just sitting outside the freezer waiting for my opportunity to use my new Ninja Creamy.
Wow. You guys are...
Mind you, Cody said he was hasty and didn't want to take the time to gather the correct ingredients and use what was in the fridge. So this first batch features Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. Oh boy, I can't wait.
Among other things.
It's healthy.
But it had to be just things that I could scrounge up without having to go to the store.
But you should have done like just why the cottage cheese? I would have done just Greek yogurt, yeah?
Oh, hindsight's 2020. It felt I
Maybe
wanted
it's
more ingredients. More ingredients equals better.
well, as you said once a few weeks ago, this is how things are invented. So maybe it's gonna be delicious.
All right. Good updates, everybody. Should we dive into news?
Yes.
All right. So just a last minute news edition. There was a comment in the last episode's comments from a user or listener that mentioned they had also reached out to Jon Collins-Black's team and received kind of a different email that didn't necessarily say Yellowstone was out of the running. So I think we need to maybe generate a bit more of a consensus from the listener audience to see if others have tried and gotten mixed messaging. But anyway, that's all the news just as a follow-up from last week's news.
I think I just saw this
I will.
morning someone posted an actual screenshot on Reddit of an email from JCB's team that
Okay,
pretty explicitly said not in Yellowstone.
perfect.
So I feel pretty
We
comfortable.
Perfect.
we also received the email that explicitly said that in the mailbag when we covered it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see who it was sent from in the email. I'm not going to be revealing anybody's email address, but it was like a direct person's email from JCB's publicity team.
Okay.
So I feel confident in that email. But someone also could have received something different, but I feel confident in what we received.
Perfect.
In a screenshot.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that last week as well, that you had eyes on the email. So anyway, I'm just throwing a little dissent. Usually I avoid the YouTube comments because I'm scared of them. If there's criticism in there, I don't want to see it. But for some reason I looked this week. So I saw that, and then I saw the criticism about saying live, or it wasn't really criticism. Oh. They were just curious whether or not they're missing a live stream. And no, you are not. It's all recorded. Next time I'll say, and recorded live from New Mexico. And maybe that will resolve the issue. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to say the person who left the comment in YouTube is lying or anything. I'm sure there's
no
validity to the email that they received as well, but we're reporting on what we have our eyes on.
Yes, absolutely. And it could be a timing thing where, that person emailed before they had made a decision to say no, before JCB had made a decision to say absolutely not in Yellowstone, and clarify that a bit more. So anyway, probably not worth lingering on. Let's get into...
I do feel like there's more I want to get off my chest about the Yellowstone thing, but I'm worried that it's like not commentary. It's just me complaining. Ooh, so I think I'm just going to try and take a deep breath and let it go.
A Cody rant.
I don't think I'd say too much new stuff. It's just a lot of the stuff we said initially, just
okay.
Questionable.
That's mature of you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's dive into horseshoes and hand grenades. All right, so as promised, I'm going to go a little bit farther down the Hopi calendar rabbit hole, following up with a little bit of information that relates to last week's content. So let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Okay. All right, so here again is a picture of the Hopi calendar. This is a little bit fragmented, so I'm just going to go through a couple pieces of information and thought process about further study on this topic. First thing to mention is I'm kind of discounting July in the Hopi calendar as being important, and that's because in the original print version of the book, at least the first couple editions, the August description of Talapamuya was copied word for word exactly from August and July. So I feel like a little bit of, also from the YouTube comments, metagaming is the word you were looking to describe, I think, last week, Cody. So a little bit of metagaming here with the book. If July and the Nigva were important, I think that would have been caught probably in Jon Collins-Black's editing. Again, kind of the main things I'm considering a hard clue here is the underlined letters in the T in August, the N in January, E in February, R and L in April, and the A in May. So that's kind of my main focus right now. As discussed last week, talked a little bit about how antler, which that could be anagrammed from those letters, could relate to the Hopi calendar and chapter 8 clues. And again, I'm throwing out July because it was a typo in the actual image in the early editions of the books. Doing a little bit more of a deep dive, what I wanted to do is figure out where Jon Collins-Black got reference to this Hopi calendar. And it seems to me, if you just Google Hopi calendar or do an image search in Google, you'll come up with numerous versions. I'm showing one from Cloud Chief and Company here on the left. That's kind of in the same orientation as the one in the book. But then when you actually go to the Kachina House website, that one is actually word for word the exact copy of what's in Jon Collins-Black's There's Treasure Inside book. So one idea is he used the Kachina House calendar as his reference for making his version of the Hopi calendar in the book. Certainly another option is both the Kachina House website and Jon Collins-Black found a reference that they both used for their publications. The interesting thing about the Kachina House is Kachina House was a reference that I used last week when talking about the Katsinas or the Kachinas. This seems to be the main reference that at least ChatGPT is using for coming up with a somewhat comprehensive list of different Kachinas in the Hopi culture. So that was exciting, thinking about connecting pieces of where Jon Collins-Black is getting his information. So that's going to be a little bit of a theme for this Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. Kachina House has another version of the Hopi calendar you can see here, a little bit different color coding and things like that. But it is, again, exactly the same wording, word for word, between that black and white version and this colorized version and Jon Collins-Black's version. So again, both of these references from Kachina House, it could be that Jon Collins-Black referenced the Kachina House version, or Kachina House and JCB both referenced the same original source material, which I have not been able to track down what that might be yet. So that's one nugget there. Anyway, if I make the assumption that he's using Kachina House references, then I think I'm on the right track of using Kachina House a bit more and doing the Kachina research. So I think that could be fruitful in using that information. The other thing I've been doing is compiling a bit of information about the underlined and overlined letters in the Hopi calendar and starting to build out a table. So things to think about a little bit past and future box-ish. What letter of the alphabet are these? Is the line location above or below each of these letters? What month are they associated with on the Hopi calendar? What letter in the month numerically is underlined or overlined? The Hopi season, and then the letter in the Hopi season associated with the letter that was underlined or overlined in the month. And then I need to do a bit more work, but collecting as much information as I can about each of those Hopi seasons and the dances associated with them. So anyway, I'm working through filling this out. I haven't come up with any eureka moments so far, but I'll keep you guys posted. I have more, but any comments so far?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I'm wondering regarding your kind of, I wouldn't say throwing out, but kind of what you're doing with July.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what you think about kind of the opposite of that, the vice versa of that, which
Mm-hmm.
is he was obviously then maybe he was doing something special with August, and that's why I ended up in there twice. So are you putting any extra emphasis on August okay. in the same way that you're kind of, I can't think of a better word than disregarding July, even though I know you're not disregarding it entirely. But because you're putting less emphasis on July, you're putting more emphasis on August, thinking that extra August may have ended up in there because he was altering that one more or having some special emphasis on that one.
Interesting. No, that's a good point. I did not consider that. So well said.
Well, not well said. I kind of tripped over all my words, but I got the point across. The only other thing I've been thinking, I thought about this when you talked about the Hopi calendar last episode, but something that kind of, I don't know, stands out to me in a weird way is his choice to underline two of the letters in April.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has other opportunity to underline the same letter in a different month and spread it out a bit. And I don't know if that was just like, I mean, it could be just nothing. Could be a design thing of just randomly underlining whatever he wants. It just seems like if he's kind of trying to halfway hide those underlines, in my mind, I would maybe space them out more, and he had the opportunity to do so. So I think it's probably nothing, but it's something that's kind of just been like tickling at my brain a little bit every time I look at that calendar.
Yeah, I wonder a lot what the meaning is of where he put those underlines, because as you said, there's multiple options. I'd be a little bit more bolstered going down the Kachina route if it weren't for August. So I'll go back to the image here. All of the underlines are happening during Katsina season, except for August, unfortunately, which is the one in non-Katsina season. So I think that would have been a little bit more. I would have been a little bit more excited about the Kachina research if they all were in that section. But anyway, I think
maybe that's why he tried to move August to where July is.
But
no, notice if I just bump
there is no
Katsina season.
There is no tea available in Katsina season, I guess, is one thing to note here. So he might have been limited in options. Bryn, you have a comment, sorry.
Oh, I was just trying to remember. I don't know. I think I ended up with your book, Cody. But so the August description was originally under July as well. That was the error.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was thinking through that correctly.
Yes. So in my book, July says Talapamuya, snake, antelope, or flute ceremony, which is the copy
so both
of
the
August.
title
Yes.
and the description.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me move on. So I also was reading through chapter 8 this week to look back and see what clues are in there, what Forrest Fenn pick nuggets we had picked out. And as mentioned, going back to try to figure out maybe where JCB got some of his information from, I seem to have come across some wording that seems very similar to the book chapter and internet resources. So according to the original Miami Beach Antique Show, this is a little blurb about Charles Loma. Charles Loma was a jewelry artist who used the stones of the earth to tell stories. He was also first and foremost, sorry, this is blocking me, born in the little village of Hautevilla on the Third Mesa in Arizona as a member of the Badger clan in 1921. He spent most of his life in the same small town as an active member of the community. So the information about being born in 1921 to the Badger clan and being born in Hautevilla, like that's all almost word for word in chapter 8 of There's Treasure Inside. So we're kind of in the same quandary where, this website might have gotten the same information that Jon Collins-Black referenced, maybe in a book or something like that, but it's also possible that maybe JCB got this information from a web search as well. Let's see. Sorry, I did not finish this slide. I'm just going to look at the top part so far. While scores of contemporary jewelers cite Loma as their influence, he claims only 2 apprentices, which is also stated in There's Treasure Inside. However, in There's Treasure Inside, we only learn about 1 apprentice, which was Charles Loma's niece named Sonway in the book. But one piece of information that's not in the book is Sonway's full name, which is actually Verma Nekwatiwa, which made me interested because I was wondering who the second apprentice was, and it turns out that it is a Moroccan-raised Ivli Sabate. And so I'm wondering if this is a piece of information that he wants us to look up. Cody, you're laughing.
I'm laughing.
Okay.
I'm laughing because everything leads back to St. Louis or Paris. I just read the first sentence on the next line.
Or San Francisco, yeah. So Evely Sabate was born in Algeria in 1940, was raised in Morocco, and educated in Paris. In 1968, she moved to San Francisco, where she met a traditional Hopi man who invited her to a dance at the Third Mesa. That'd be in Arizona. And there she met legendary jeweler Charles Loloma. They collaborated for the next 4.5 years, creating some of the most innovative works of Charles Loloma's career. After leaving Hopi Nation, she continued to create her exceptional original designs for the next 24 years and retired in the late 1990s and now teaches yoga in Tucson. Her masterpieces are sought after by collectors from around the world. So that information is from the Four Winds Gallery website, just about this second apprentice, Evelise Abate. Now, the interesting thing is here from a different article from New Mexico magazine from 2016 called The Hippie and the Hopi. I'm going to read an excerpt from that. One day, while attending the San Francisco trial of a Native American draft resistor, she met 3 Hopi men who invited her to attend a bean dance. And so bean dance is important because that's specifically referenced in There's Treasure Inside as Charles Loloma being a bean dance practitioner in the Hopi tribe. The reason this hit came about is because I was trying to find the reference that Charles Loloma was a bean dancer, and this is kind of one of the first things I came across, and then there's more coincidences associated with this. With nothing better to do, she went to the local laundromat where a man washing clothes alongside her introduced himself as Charles Loloma. Charles was very, very interested in people and even more curious when the person was a lady, Sabate said. I got intrigued when he asked me, "What have you done in your life so far?" Sabate told Loloma she'd been drawing and sewing tapestries.
Yeah.
He said, "Would you like to learn how to make jewelry?" There's no way I could have said no. Today, hailed by many native jewelers as the most influential innovator of his time, by the late 1960s, Loloma had gone from having his jewelry repeatedly rejected from juried art shows for not being Indian enough. I bolded that because that's almost word for word what's in JCB's book. And to having work commissioned by Lady Bird Johnson for state gifts to the Queen of Denmark and Imelda Marcos. So that excerpt about the Queen of Denmark, that's also explicitly said almost word for word in the JCB book as well. So it seems like likely Jon Collins-Black used this article for some of his information in the book. And just noting that the line above is Loloma said she told Loloma she'd been drawing and sewing tapestries seems coincidental, if not very interesting. So that's what I have so far. So I'm going to do a little bit more research into Eveli Sabate. And there's a YouTube interview with her that was published in 2022. That's like an hour and a half that I'm planning on watching next, just to learn more about that story in case it's important as one of the pieces of research that Jon Collins-Black was hoping people would come across. End of Horseshoes and Hand Grenades for today.
That's really interesting. It's hard because it's like, where do we do the additional research? And I'm glad there are such strong connections to like make it intriguing to continue learning more about her. Because I guess my original thought was maybe Jon Collins-Black only talked about the niece in the book because of this kind of generational theme throughout the book.
That would make sense. Yeah.
But if he's explicitly listing that there were 2,
and he pulled quotes in my mind. He pulled quotes from that article in the New Mexican, New Mexico.
No,
magazine.
I think you've found reason to make it like you definitely have found reason to make it interesting to see like what all these layers are. I think that's really good.
All right, so yeah, a bit more of a to be continued. Cody, you have a comment?
I was just going to say one other thread that I've been kind of drawn to pulling is the Hopi clans. And I got kind of reinvigorated here for a second by seeing the Charles Loloma Badger clan connection. I was doing my general Hopi research. I remember seeing a lot of references to clans and some specific stuff that I don't want to talk about right now because I think I'll put my foot in my mouth because it was a little while ago now and I can't really remember, but I remember some information on clans that I want to go reread some of that stuff. And I think that that could be an interesting thread to pull now, knowing this Badger clan thing.
All right. Should we dive into the mailbag?
Mailbag, mailbag, mailbag. We've got mail.
Bryn, why don't you kick us off on the mailbag?
I've got mailbag today. Our first mailbag comes to us from Meghann. Meghann wrote into us, I don't know, a while back, and we covered her rant on the typos in the book, if you remember that. So this is kind of along the same lines as that previous rant, but she is working on the Forrest Fenn box. And I thought it was really wonderful because she sent us an image where she side by side has a picture of the original Forrest Fenn poem and Jon Collins-Black's poem for the Forrest Fenn box. And I think because when you see them side by side, if you want to go ahead and pull up the image, Blake, there's some really interesting things with grammar and punctuation. So I'm going to go ahead and just read a few things direct from her email, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on it. So her first point is the apostrophes or lack thereof in Camper's Blaze. Then he does use one in Thinker's Stone. He clearly knows how to use an apostrophe. So what's up with Campers? Does this mean several people, several trailers? But why no apostrophe for the plural form? So it's not possessive of the blaze, but a plural Camper's Blaze. Maybe this can help others think of that in a different way. So I just thought the apostrophe use was an interesting thing to point out right off the bat. And I think Cody maybe had mentioned something about the apostrophes early on too. So we can kind of leave that one as is. And then I want to move on to the second one, unless you guys have anything apostrophe related to say.
I think we had mentioned it in the Thinker's Stone context, I believe.
Yeah, I think we had touched on it. What would a Camper's Blaze be without an apostrophe? An old burned up camper that had caught on fire. Literal Camper's Blaze. Or would that still have an apostrophe? I'm not sure.
Yeah, don't get your
Campers
English language lessons from us, I don't think. I don't know either. All right, what's the next one?
Okay, so she said, I was hiking and repeating the words of the Forrest Fenn poem over and over, thinking about the side-by-side I've done and remembering the hear me all typo. Look at the whole poem line by line. JCB really tried to match up and use the Forrest Fenn wording and rhyme scheme when he could. In the 9th line, JCB doesn't say from there, but instead from here. He could have said from here. I think it would have flowed just the same, but he changed that part. There's a whole linear hike, and at the seeming end of the hike, he tells us, near here, it's nestled all in dream. I don't think the here is the end of the hike. I think the here, or the X marks the spot, if you will, is back near the part of the hike where you are more on your own. He even draws attention to here by saying, hear me all, instead of hear me all. Of course, different spellings. When you look at the side-by-side of the Forrest Fenn poem and Jon Collins-Black's poem line by line, it's so blatantly obvious that he misspelled that. I don't think the editor or JCB's mom may have noticed the slip, but clearly JCB was writing this poem side by side, the Fenn poem, based on all the similarities. So that was kind of a lot, but I think the main thing I really liked from this, and just a high-level summary here, is when you do see them side by side, it is clear how closely he was trying to follow it. And we also consider how well he knew the original Forrest Fenn poem. So the use of here, H-E-R-E, rather than H-E-A-R, is incredibly interesting.
Do you have, you said you had Cody's copy of the book. Has that been updated? I believe in the E version of the book that last here on the last stanza has been changed to H-E-A-R, is my understanding.
I'm trying to get to it now.
I'm pretty sure I've looked at the ebook version and it's been fixed. I'm like 90% sure.
Okay. In the version I have, it's still H-E-R-E.
Okay.
Well, maybe ignore me.
I don't know. I'll have to double check.
I think maybe, but I think regardless, it's interesting then in the third stanza that he says from here versus from there.
No,
So I think there's something really valuable there to think through, like those little nuances of how he's directing us through the path. Like what that here saying here versus there was very intentional. And so I think if we continue to look at how he's using here throughout the rest of the poem, that could be a nice little interesting thought experiment.
I agree that that is interesting, the changes that were made. That it would seem easy enough to be closer to Forrest Fenn's poem in a couple of these cases. I think that's a really good point from you and Meghann.
Yes.
Yeah, just having these pictures side by side alone is wonderful.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. I'm not going to do the part. I'm trying to complain less. So I'm not going to do the part where I just complain about the obvious things to complain about with typos. The one thing I'll add that is probably useful or could be useful is I think that initially I totally agree on the from here versus from there, because it seems like he's clearly trying to copy the Forrest Fenn poem. So copy as much as you can would be what I would think. But I think it may have changed or been influenced by the previous line, because in Forrest Fenn, it's put in below the home of Brown, and you're literally there. So then it's from there. It's no place for the meek. And then in Jon Collins-Black's poem, it's passed by a place where once was Brown. So he may have used here instead of there because you're passing by something that could be a distance away, and he doesn't want you to then think, okay, now from there. He wants you to say from here, the location near there, not from there. If that makes sense.
I get what you're saying.
I can see why he changed it in the context of your position relative to the Brown.
Excellent. I like the commentary. That's good.
All right. Any other comments on this mailbag, or should we get into the deep divey one today?
Do you want me to do my other one quickly before handing it off?
Sure. Let's do that.
All right. I'll keep some momentum going. Okay, so this was from Shabon, and they say there is something written on Rob Levinsky's glasses on page 49 of the hard copy. I can't make out what it says, but maybe you or one of your viewers can. It's driving me bonkers. So if you want to go ahead and pull up that first picture, Blake, this kind of gives us a high level perspective of where there's kind of this weird squiggle on the, what do you call that part of the glasses that goes behind your ears?
I don't know.
I'm sure there's a word for that.
Stem.
That's gotta be a word. The stem of the glasses. That doesn't seem right. But anyways, there's like this weird little, almost looks like writing. You definitely can't make out what it says as far as if it does say anything. Enhance. So I was really excited to see this because then it reminded me of in the Pokemon box, that purple image at the end There is also something very similar that had jumped out to me on the right-hand side of that photo as well. Sorry, Blake.
I'm pulling it up. I had
really putting you to work with the different
technical
images.
difficulties that all my images change to the same things, and I have to reload them. Sorry. So this is what you're talking about with the Pokemon box here.
Yeah, and I should have provided like a full picture to show better context of where this is, but it's very much like on the far right-hand side, middle-ish of that purple image, and you can see it's like very similar, squiggly. I don't know. But on the purple image, it is very much out of place. It's the only like squiggly of its kind. And it looks very similar to what was on Rob Levinsky's glasses. So I don't know what to make of that. Nor does Shabon. So if anybody has any insights on these weird squiggles, please let us know.
Yeah, have you looked, I mean, besides the images you've pulled here, have you looked at the print version of the book? Because it would have to be accessible via print version of the book for this to be valid in my mind.
Yep, you can see it. I saw it originally on the Pokemon image just in the book.
Okay.
And it's so small that it like I don't think it can be anything, but it's just weird that it shows up now. So I guess that's why I didn't pay too much attention to it when I only knew about it in the purple image. Because I'm like, if in the book itself, I would have to think even with like a magnifying glass or whatever, it's just so tiny. I cannot imagine there's anything you can actually do with it. So I think that's just why now I'm puzzled. Like, why is it showing up again?
Fair.
And maybe it's just part of like a filter or something. But on the glasses, it seemed like it lined up very well with the glasses.
Right.
So that's kind of weird too.
Yeah, the glasses one to me looked like it could be just like shadow and just a product of the filter he put on there, because it seems like it's very similar in color to the other shadowy places on Rob's head in the photo.
That's my gut reaction as well, Cody.
Yeah.
That is
my gut in general tells me that these things, I mean, they definitely look interesting, but I don't think there's anything there on purpose. It's my current stance.
Bryn is looking at the book for audio only people right now.
Yeah, sorry. Just quality content right here. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can definitely see it, and it is weird. But I do not own a magnifying glass, so I guess I don't know like how much you can zoom in on these things in a very just like physical way. Maybe I need to, what are those things called? A lute?
A loop? A jeweler's loop?
Oh yeah, a loop, not a lute.
Yeah, it's another one of those instances where after one box is found, it'll be very telling if JCB's like, oh, you guys were supposed to look at this 2 pixel tall writing in this picture. I don't think that's the case. And if it is the case, it would definitely change the way I'm looking at other things.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Should we go into the main event mailbag today? So this is a message, Bryn, that you got with you had with Keen Agers, and it's a bit of a long email, so I'll go through it. I have some thoughts on it, and then I think Cody's done a deep dive as well, so a couple pieces of content here. So they start out with quote unquote a requisite compliment. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's too nice. On page 225, the last paragraph states, quote unquote, however, I was able to remember. Okay, sorry. This is for past and future box. Let's just set the stage here. Past and future box. Very exciting. On page 225, the last paragraph states, however, I was able to remember one game from my childhood that I felt capable of bringing to this book. It's not as fun as Pac-Man. It's not as imaginative as D&D, but it is a game I am pretty sure you can excel at. Just don't get upset at me if it's too easy. Remember, I already told you that you are not required to be a genius to find any of our treasures. So a key paragraph from the past and future box. And then this is also from the Keen Agers. In 1970, John Horton Conway developed an Excel game called The Game of Life. So I have to pause right there and clarify something right now, that one knock against this is that Excel was not released until 1985. So Microsoft Excel. So it's possible that the Keen Agers are meaning to say like a cell, like in Excel, a cell kind of based game. And that will make sense in just a second here. You can see this in action at playgameoflife.com. So if people want to check that out, they can. I'll have a few screenshots here of that. I was able to remember one game from my childhood that I felt capable of bringing to this book. Conway's Game of Life is an infinite, zero-player game made up of a two-dimensional orthogonal grid with cell automation that demonstrates how complex patterns can emerge from simple rules. The rules seem simple, but they must be applied to all 8 cells surrounding each cell. So if you have a grid of 30 cells, each of these cells can have up to 8 contiguous cells that will manipulate the cell in the middle based on the rules. So I'll go through the rules here in a second. Although this would be a nightmare for me to do manually, it is possible to do without additional tools. One of Cody's clarifying rules, can it be done with only the book and boots, the tools required as stated by JCB. I like these types of qualifiers as it helps us rule out the rabbit holes we frequently run down while dreaming of treasures. Okay, so let me just have a commentary shortly here on the Game of Life, and then we'll continue with the email here in a second. All right, so just stole some screenshots from Wikipedia here. Conway's Game of Life. The Game of Life, known as Conway's Game of Life, is a cellular automaton, devised by British mathematician John Horton Conway in 1970. It's a zero-player game, meaning that its evolution is determined by its initial state, requiring no further inputs. One interacts with the Game of Life by creating an initial configuration and observing how it resolves. So here's an example of like the Game of Life in action as an animation here. You can see that the cells that are represented here are just squares in a matrix, and the rules dictate how these cells are moving back and forth. And so it probably helps to talk about the rules of this game and how this automaton works. So here's an example of the 4 rules that make up the Game of Life. So at any one time, you kind of take a snapshot of the cells that are filled in and the cells that are empty. And then for each cell within the grid, 1, any live cell, in this case, any of the cells that are colored black, with fewer than 2 live neighbors, dies, as if by underpopulation. So that's why it's called the Game of Life. It's kind of like a biological simulator, very theoretical, but of interest. 2, any live cell with 2 or 3 live neighbors lives on to the next generation. 3, any live cell with more than 3 live neighbors dies, as if by overpopulation. And then 4, any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors becomes a live cell, as if by reproduction. So that's all of the 4 rules that are associated with this. Every cell looks at its 8 surrounding cells, orthogonally surrounding cells, and sees which rule it falls into, and then the next step of the Game of Life takes place, the next quote-unquote generation. So that's how this all works. I have a screenshot here of, if you go to playgameoflife.com, what this looks like. And so it's just a giant grid. You can zoom in and out and make it very big if you want. But basically what you can do is you can click individual cells and then hit start, and it will run the simulation based on only those 4 rules that are stated just now. So as a kind of a dummy example here, if we consider kind of that pattern in the middle of the word search, so you probably have guessed by now, but can you apply this grid from the game of life to the word search in the past and future box? So just as a dummy example here, I highlighted the quote-unquote red herring of O's in the middle of that grid, and then simulated press play, and you kind of get this pattern. And it actually kind of ends up at a final state. This is from all of the O's in the grid being highlighted as start point. It kind of goes step, 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 and then ends at this final state where it just goes back and forth between this vertical and horizontal line. So it's kind of a roundabout way of explaining what this game of life is doing. And you can, again, go to playgameoflife.com and test this out for yourself. Let me get back to the email. So, using the rules of the game of life, we entered our word search into Excel. But it is a game I'm pretty sure you can excel at, quote unquote. The rules are to set up your grid initially, giving each cell an indicator of alive or dead, using 0s and 1s. Although not really using true binary code, it does throw back to Visual Basic macros, giving all letters either a 0 or a 1, using the 0s in the word search, or in this case the O's in the word search, as the qualifier. You can only perform 1 round before this configuration plays out. We were discouraged. It's supposed to be an infinite game. Thinking that I had entered my macros incorrectly, I checked, double-checked, and rechecked, and then checked again. When I dream, I go big, expecting some grand revelation to play out like a marquee in front of me. Yeah, dud. Only gave me 9 squares. But was it really a bust? Because it's feasible to manually complete 1 round without the computer, we accepted that this might still be viable. Just don't get upset at me if it's too easy, quote unquote. And so here's the results. And so I'm going to show the results of how the Keen Agers did this exercise. So this is a screenshot from their Excel approach. Instead of coloring the O's as alive, they just had every other cell in the word search as alive and the O's as dead. And then when you just do 1 generation forward, this is the pattern that you get. And what they said was 9 squares. That's a dud, right? However, when you look at those 9 squares that are from 1 generation of the game of life, they actually were able to anagram WA square from those with a 0 in the direct middle of the word search. And so the results of the round are on the bottom. The corresponding letters are highlighted in yellow in the upper section. The letters WASQARE and the middle O remain alive, leading us to the middle of Washington Square. Remember, I already told you you are not required to be a genius to find any of our treasures. We've tried different configurations for the initial grid, such as 0s equaling 1, using only O's left over after the word search, other letters that were left over after the word search, and or anagram. This was the only finding that produced something that seemed worth investigation. Also, we cannot unsee Washington Square. If it means something else, we'll never see it. All right. So what's your guys' commentary so far on this? What do you think?
Brendan, you should go first because my commentary is going to be like another 10 minutes.
I will say, while it does seem on theme for the chapter, I don't know if it hits the mark. I'm getting so nitpicky here. I don't know if this feels like on theme enough with the context of the chapter. Maybe because maybe I'm being swayed by Blake saying Excel didn't exist when this came out. I don't know. It just feels like it's maybe a bit of a stretch. However, the fact that it came out with Washington Square feels very interesting to me. So I guess I may be down the middle.
I'm like the exact opposite. Like the Washington Square to me seems like I'm not a huge anagrammer with just a handful of letters person. But the whole like everything else I'm really into. So I have the exact opposite feelings as Bryn does.
Yeah, and I did
That's
do
good.
the fact checking. I put that exact pattern, the way they did it, into playgameoflife.com and confirmed the pattern they did get out was legitimate based on the rules. So they did it via Excel manually or with macros. I just did it on gameoflife.com and we came up with the same answer. So I've validated the method at least. Whether or not you believe the outcome is seemingly up for debate. Let me have a little bit more commentary from the Keen Agers. Our little group of hunters, affectionately called the Keen Agers, do not have a solve that this fits into. We also do not have a box. Therefore, we wanted to share it with you guys and see what you thought. In an effort to review areas others have shown interest in, we looked for Washington Square in different locations that have been mentioned on the interweb and found very little. One search in Lake Tahoe gave us a suggestion that the locals in the area called the Upper Business District near Tahoe City, Washington Square. This could not be confirmed with even 2 sources, much less my personal requirement of 3 independent sources. So good research rules there. I like that. Skeptics might raise an eyebrow because this gives a specific idea of a location which may allow you to quote-unquote jump ahead of other clues and find a starting point. I would also offer that this may in fact be a starting point, as our founding father's name is as common as the $1 bill once was. It seems that everywhere has a Washington something. If your solve includes the 3-state divide, using Proposition 9 in California, the best connection with this would be found in San Francisco, beginning in Washington Square. Please tell us if you think this has any merit. So that's from Joy and Angela of Team Keen Agers.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of build on what I was saying, like, I'm trying to maybe lower my expectations generally for what these solves are going to be, because I think like when we did our Pokemon Summit and I was telling you guys everything I found, Cody was like, well, Jon Collins-Black is not a genius. And so like if I think about the context of the past and future box, like for me, when I have the word search, if there's something like very clever like this that needs to be done, like I want it to be done through the lens of like Zork or Ready Player One, like something very direct like that, like very on point with directly connected with the chapter. And I think I maybe need to like lower my expectations that like you can only hide so many things, so many clues, so like perfectly on theme, direct on theme, in a way that's like, because you still have to make it come together into a logical real life location as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, in general, I'm working on lowering my expectations for how elaborate all these solves are woven together. So I think I need to be more open to the fact that maybe this is on theme with the chapter in the way that I want to see it.
All right. Cody, do you have other thoughts on this? Okay. Continue.
So I've actually heard of this game of life before, and I was aware of it, and I couldn't like remember the exact rules off the top of my head. But I definitely knew what they were referring to, like two sentences into that email. Um, and Bryn sent that email. She was the first to read it and forwarded it to you, Blake, and me, with a caption. Caption something along the lines of like, "This isn't her cup of tea. Tell me if this is a good idea or not." And as soon as I read it, I was like, as soon as I was like two sentences in, I was like, "That is an excellent idea. I really like that idea." Because I feel like I've tried so many different ways of filtering a grid, and this is like an excellent and I think pretty on theme way of filtering a grid, a new one that I hadn't tried yet. So I was really excited about that idea. And I would argue it's very on theme of past and future, and it's like a very early computation. Um, and even though Excel hadn't been invented, I think if you were going to try and play it out with a new grid, the first thing you jump to is Excel, and that's actually what I did is jump to Excel. Um, Another kind
I will
of
just say, like, that's a perfect explanation of me needing to lower my standards or my expectations. Like, maybe him saying Excel isn't something literally Excel. Maybe it's just like the idea of cells. Anyways, continue.
yeah, or the idea of like if you're going to interpret this, an easy way of doing it would be to use Excel, something like that. One thing
Yeah.
I'm really surprised no one really brought light to is the idea that it's a zero player game and that the word zero is in the word search.
Hmm.
I feel like that could be a direct connection right
Oh,
there. And then I think
nice.
also that it's a zero player game would be a real strong tie to like what was the exact phrasing? Sorry if it's too
If
easy.
yeah, sorry
I
if
feel
it's
like
too
that's
easy.
the ultimate. That's like the ultimate too easy game is a zero player game where you like set the initial conditions and then it just plays itself. So I like those. Um, I really like that when you dig into it, it seems very feasible to create a word search that everything that we know that he has done so far, I think you could do that and still have plenty of room to rearrange those anagram letters in a way to do whatever you want with the whole game of life and set initial conditions. So it seems very feasible to create. If the game of life idea was correct, it's very feasible to create that game given what we already know.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that because that's another issue I was running into is like we already know his first layer of complexity, which is not super complex, but it's enough that like you're not going to have that and something else that's super super complex. So I like that this is something that there's lots of different ways to um, arrange that initial state to get the information that you need to get so many stages down the line. It just seems very doable. Um, I do like the idea of screening out a lot of the word search versus screening out just a little bit of the word search. Like I think if the game of life idea was correct, I think that the Keen Agers approach to kind of end up with like 10 or 15 letters versus the other way around, screen out, obviously not 10 or 15, but screen out half the letters and have the other half still say something. I think that that's probably the way it would have to go. Um, and then the other thing I would add is I think that if the game of life idea was correct, it needs to, it is, I think it needs to add on to other things that we know to be true in the word search. Like the Washington Square almost seems to like its own hint. And it could be, I think you could find a way to make it add on to something we already have in the word search. But I do think like when it all comes together, the whole idea of like there are 5 clues in the word search, I think that this would be a good way of getting like one of them that then needs the other 4 to give you kind of all the information you need to find the location. So I think that that's what we're looking for is a partial clue. Um, so all that being said, I got really excited about this one, as you may be able to tell by how quickly and loudly I'm talking about it. And I put together an Excel spreadsheet to start analyzing and kind of very similar to some of the other Excel spreadsheets I've done where you put in a keyword or key letters. And I'm kind of just taking the shotgun approach to it of just take guesses and see if anything hits. So I'll show you what I've got here. All right. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what I've got is you'll see many copies of the word search. And I've gone through 5 iterations of the game. So you put in your keywords or key letters up top, which creates the initial starting point for the first iteration of the game of life. And it plays out through the first 5 iterations. So let me type one in. My go-to first one is always just Oasis, even though it has a double letter. So if you use the keyword and key letters Oasis, then this first grid here becomes kind of your starting conditions for the game of life. So then the one immediately to the right of that shows you your word search grid with those game of life cells blacked out. And then the third one over in green here does the same thing, but this one acts cumulatively.
Yes.
So that if at any of the stages of the 5 stages a cell was blacked out, it stays blacked out.
Interesting.
So you can put in Oasis. You see the first stage of the game of life there, second stage there, third stage there, fourth stage there, fifth stage there, and then for each of those you see what letters will be left revealed in the word search for each of those stages, and then you can see cumulatively through each of the 5 stages as more and more get blacked out. So I think that if this is something that's going to be correct, it's going to be one of 2 things, because I do think you'll want to end up with fewer letters rather than a lot of letters. So I think either the Keen Agers approach of blacking out a lot, Oasis,
everything except
everything except Oasis. I'm not going to type them all in right now. I'll just either that or the idea of it adding up cumulatively to leave you with just a handful of letters. I think that that's also an option too. So I put this together and then did not have much time to actually play around with it. So I'm really excited to play around with it. And I think that there's some ways to approach it logically to try and maybe narrow in on good starting conditions. Like I think you could either get rid of, like, create starting conditions, look at what you'd need to have as a keyword to create starting conditions that either reveal or don't reveal things that you want revealed or not revealed. Like there's parts of the word search that we haven't really like found a lot of use for before. And I think that there's ways to see what letters need to be added to kind of your keyword to play around primarily with those like unused areas of word search. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about this one. I really like the idea. I like having a new grid filter method to play around with because I feel like I had exhausted a lot of my other grid filter methods. And now that I've got this, I can very quickly kind of shotgun approach a lot of keywords and key letters. And if anyone can think of like a really good keyword or key letter to check, I'm happy to plug them in here and see if anything comes out.
Awesome.
Where is this enthusiasm for the Pokemon box?
Blake called all my stuff woo-woo last episode, so I had to be very not woo-woo this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pokemon Box is a little bit information overload, right? Where, as you know, Cody and I are a little bit more like hard data driven, right? We want scientific types of answers. So that's why we're drawn more towards passive future where there's rules that we can follow to find a solution, right? Instead of creative thinking.
Yeah.
I will be seeking a Pokemon box partner at Treasure Con.
All right, cool. So yeah, as promised, that was a deep dive into this concept of the game of life from the Keen Agers. So thank you for sending that in. They asked if there was merit to this. I think Cody thinks there's a lot of merit. I think it's worth poking at a little bit. Bryn is going to work on Pokemon.
Correct.
All right.
I like that they have a team name. I like that a lot.
We need a team name for sure.
Yeah, we're called.
Write in your suggestions for our team name.
No, where there's treasure inside the unofficial podcast.
It's a mouthful.
All right. What's next? Discord detectives. We still have more.
Yeah.
All right, Cody, you have Discord detectives today.
I do. I got to catch my breath from all my excitement over the game of life. I'm going to share my screen again. I probably should have just left it. So this Discord detectives comes from pink-haired coder on Reddit. I thought it was interesting. I'm going to probably do a lot of, they had this like big infographic, and I'm probably going to do a lot of directly reading that infographic. Because it takes some time to figure out what order to read it in. It's kind of just all on one thing. But this is also to do with the past and future box. So they start with the count 11, and they take that to mean counting 11 across and 11 down graph style, which is down here, which leads to walk in reverse, and then leads to an anagram for the word Minerva. Right before walk there. And then they have included an excerpt about why Minerva is important. It says, unlike X marking the spot, which was populated by Treasure Island and has no historical basis, many books on the subject from history show that Minerva, or 13, tends to mark the spot. So there's parts of this solve that I really like, and parts that I'm not so gung-ho about. This Minerva thing, I'm not so gung-ho about. I did some digging in to kind of like find some confirmation of the whole number 13 and the Minerva thing. And I only found one or two references to it, and they were both pretty out there. So I kind of want to focus less on that and more on the next part, which is the part I'm particularly interested in. So then they go on to reference kind of the states that we had talked about before, the state abbreviations. So they say Tennessee and North Carolina being right next to each other with the word state between them. So you can see that in purple there, the Tennessee and North Carolina, and state in kind of a maroon color. You can see how it kind of intersects between Tennessee and North Carolina there. Given that this is the past and future box, it seems wise to look at both the past and the future. Doing that with the state between the two, we're led to Franklin, a proposed state or a proposed step for the corner of Tennessee between the two. Anyway, back in the day, I can't remember the exact time frame. It was around like Civil War time. This state of Franklin tried to become its own state, and it's right there between on the eastern side of Tennessee there. So they include this excerpt from the Wikipedia page that says the state of Franklin was an unrecognized proposed state located in present-day East Tennessee in the United States. Franklin was created in 1784 from part of the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains that had been offered by North Carolina as a cession to Congress to help pay off debts related to the American War for Independence. It was founded with the intent of becoming the 14th state of the United States. So I thought that was pretty neat. And it says, well, it's no longer a state now. It fits the word search position from the past. And they reference adding that Dope from the Discord pointed out that North Carolina was the 12th state, and divide goes right through 12 right next to North Carolina. So 12 next to North Carolina, and then divide through there. It definitely seems like a lot of those keywords line up, and obviously the states and word state line up. So I think that state of Franklin was the part of this solve that I was most interested in and seemed like it had the most merit to me. So then from there, I'll go through the rest of their solve, but I was definitely big on the state of Franklin part, which they kind of pivot off of pretty quickly during the solve here. So going with Franklin as important and Ohio pointing to its position in the word search. So they're an Ohio person here. Leads to looking up Franklin in Ohio. Well, there is a city named Franklin, Ohio, south of Dayton, and ironically near Arrowhead Quarry. We plug in Minerva, so they're back to the Minerva. We plug in Minerva as X marks the spot, like treasure maps of old. We instead get a much more interesting area, Minerva Lake, Minerva Park, Ohio, and Columbus. But what's so special about Minerva Park? Once more, we look to the past. So this is another excerpt from, it looks like, another Wikipedia article about Minerva Park. The village land was founded as a trolley park, also named Minerva Park. The park had a roller coaster, a small zoo, a lake, and other attractions. The park opened in July 13th, 1895. It operated till 1902. After Olentangy Park outcompeted Minerva Park. For its later history, this site became a graveyard for discarded streetcars. So they also found that to be interesting information. As they say, once a park was shut down and then turned into a graveyard for discarded streetcars. And that's familiar and reminiscent of something from Ready Player One, a hideout no less. And then they include an excerpt from Ready Player One that talks about, and I remember reading this in the book and seeing it in the movie. The excerpt they include just says, after walking about half a mile, I reached a giant mound of old cars and trucks piled haphazardly along the stack's eastern perimeter. Decades ago, the cranes had cleared the park of as many abandoned vehicles as possible to make room for even more stacks, and they dumped them in huge piles like this one all around the settlement's perimeter. Many of them were nearly as tall as the stacks themselves. So it definitely seems reminiscent of the book, Ready Player One. And then they also link the idea of trolleys to counting the vehicles from the Riddler part of the Past and Future box text. Looking back at the past Minerva Park, the park's creator had to plead with Westville to not shut it down. So I think that's just a reference to West in the word search. And I'll wrap it up here with, but that's not all. IOI, CLN above the O's, which is right here in kind of a darker maroon color above the O's. IOI being from Ready Player One, as well as in Columbus, Ohio. So those are both references to the Ready Player One book. As for CLN, this can either be a clever nod to Klein, again, Ready Player One, or I'm thinking Columbus North and Minerva Park in north of Columbus. So they do a lot of leaning on the Minerva idea, which is something I just had a tough time buying into just because I couldn't find real reputable sources that like Minerva would be enough of a standalone keyword that JCB would lean on it that hard. But the part that I found particularly interesting was this state of Franklin and the way that it lines up so perfectly with some of these keywords in the word search. So I actually dug into state of Franklin stuff a little bit more. I didn't find too much more that's that interesting, but I did find a couple of things. Looking at the state of Franklin, it says in this is from a Wikipedia page on the state of Franklin. It says in law school examinations in the US, a fictional state of Franklin, and that is like based off of that same state of Franklin, I think, is used as a placeholder name for a generic state, often the one in which the property of Blackacre is located. So it's kind of like I guess it's exactly what they say there. And then I followed the thread down to Blackacre. And the only thing I found that's kind of interesting with that is, again, from the Wikipedia, Blackacre, the main one, Whiteacre, Greenacre, Brownacre, are variations, and variations are placeholder names used for fictitious estates and land. So I thought that was interesting because it is a pretty direct link through just a couple of clear steps there to another word, another keyword from the word search, and estate.
Interesting.
So it seems like it's using a lot of those keywords in a way that references some stuff that makes a lot of sense. Past and future box, it's clear American history connections. And it just seems like that lines up really, really well with kind of the idea of those keywords like geographically being located within the word search the same way that they're geographically located in the United States. So I think that one could possibly bear a little more digging into. But that's their whole solve, and then in particular the kind of section of the solve that I found particularly interesting. Thoughts?
Yeah, the Franklin, Tennessee, or state of Franklin that was going to come off of Tennessee is very a fun trivia and fits with the geometry of the word search and the words associated there. So I also am on board with you, Cody, that I like that approach very much. How to connect the rest of these subjects. I mean, the Minerva Park part of Ohio to get to Franklin, Ohio, I think it's a bit of a leap. It's definitely creative. The Minerva Park being a streetcar, abandoned streetcar lot. I like the connection to some of those more challenging parts of the chapter, like you said, because tallying the traffic of the vehicles, quote unquote, right? We don't know what those vehicles are, so any creative answer to that I always hone in on as something I like. So, and the connection to Ready Player One is very creative as well, with the stacks, where
I did like that part too,
where the cities, a lot of people live in those areas. So I don't know, a lot to like. I might poke at this a bit too.
Yeah, I think that if I were you, and if I also were me, I'm going to be poking a little bit more into that state of Franklin. I think that's something new that I'm excited about in a way that I haven't been really excited about in a while. So I like that. Other than Game of Life, I'm very excited about Game of Life. But I like the state of Franklin. I like the theme connections. I guess I was just frustrated with pink-haired coders solved because it's like they got that thing I was really excited about, and it seems like they just kind of pivoted off the state of Franklin part and went back to the Minerva part that I'm not as keen on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do like like you said, I like the abandoned cars part of the Minerva Park thing.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that there was an estate connection because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working on Past and Future Box, but the one thing that really drives me crazy that I haven't heard anyone really talk about yet is the quote in the book where he says, with his will and testament, which is like a direct line from estate planning. So like the estate word and the words, like there's a whole like Halliday creating this game to give his estate on to someone else. Like there's a very big theme there, I think, as I say, not being involved in the Past and Future Box right now, but it's like I feel like that's being very overlooked. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just not in tune, but it seems like that's something pretty big that hasn't really been brought into a lot of solves that I've seen.
And that context for the word estate that you're describing is like right, very on the nose with what I was describing. Very similar to what I was describing. It's like in a legal document, a draft legal document sense.
Right. Yep, that fits in very nicely with his will and testament.
Yeah. I think and that's a pretty linear connection too. They run a huge number of stretches to get from that like state of Franklin to that placeholder name for estates. So yeah, there's some stuff there I really like, and I'm going to look into more.
All right. Excellent. Good find, Cody. More to come on that, maybe. We shall see. Should we get into coincidence of the day to wrap up this episode? All right. So I have coincidence of the day today. I was in Las Vegas, for vacation last week, and had a whole bunch of coincidences. I won't go through all of them. Some butterfly connections. So I went to a show at the Sphere, and they had these remote control butterflies that were flying around before the show and during the show. So that made me immediately think of the butterfly connections. Let's see if I still have my pictures up or if they've disappeared. Here's the first one. I was waiting outside the poker room, and there's this store called Miner's Gems, and sure enough, they had Tanzanite as referenced in Jon Collins-Black's There's Treasure Inside. It's one of the chapters is pretty heavy on Tanzanite talk, so that was cool. That's why it's a coincidence of the day.
Nice.
And then the other thing that I did in Vegas was an escape room. As prescribed by the last Jon Collins-Black interview. So we did very well. The game master said that we were the best team ever, but I wonder if he says that to everybody.
Wow.
So this
what was your time, and what was the time limit?
We did it in 35 minutes for a 60-minute room. So we were almost a little more than halfway done. So it's possible that we were high up in the rankings on that.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was a little submarine themed room. It was awesome.
Did you gather any good ways of thinking or types of puzzles that you want to try to apply to any TTI content?
That's a good question. I didn't think about it too much, other than I thought it would be a good coincidence of the day.
Well, I'm sure if there's anything that jumped out, it would have jumped out. So maybe there wasn't anything too applicable.
Yeah, it might be worth
a good exercise.
It might be worth recapping the puzzles to you guys to see. We'll do that offline. Don't worry, audience. But to see if that sparks any inspiration. But yeah, no, it's super fun.
Nice.
So a lot of coincidences happening in Las Vegas.
Maybe we'll do an escape room
Place
when we go to TreasureCon.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. All right. I think that's an episode. Any parting thoughts from you guys? Are we wrapping it up? Are we logging off?
Logging off.
Logging off. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.